The life of Thorfinn, son of Thors. Thorfinn, also named Thorson or called Sinfi, is a former warrior of Askeladd's band, as well as a former slave on Ketil's farm, who is currently a trader and adventurer attempting to settle in Vinland. He is the main protagonist of Vinland Saga. He was born in Iceland as the son of Helga and Thors, the most famous Jomsviking warrior until his defection. He is also the brother to Ylva and is related to the leadership of the Jomsvikings through his mother, who is the daughter of the third chief, Sigvaldi. He spent more than a decade attempting to take revenge on Askeladd, the man who killed his father, even following him into battle to stay close to him, and grew cold and merciless, killing countless people. After he attacked Canute in a moment of shock and rage for killing Askeladd, the death of whom was Thorfinn's goal for most of his life, Thorfinn was enslaved as a punishment. 4 years later, he gained his freedom and changed his life. He vowed to make good on his life and create a land free of slavery in Vinland. This is a dream that he heard from Leif Erikson's tales as a child. After leaving Ketil's farm with a new friend, Einar, he then journeyed to Greece in order to get money to be able to make a trip to Vinland. And after 3 years, he had saved up enough money and people to finally make his journey to Vinland. He created Arnide village on Vinland. Appearance. Thorfinn's appearance is consistent throughout the story. He has bushy hair, old clothes, and 2 knives. He is also short, as stated by multiple characters in the story. When Thorfinn was a child, he had a happier face, round with bright, curious eyes and well-kept hair. He has a somewhat slight build, which adds to his strength. Thorfinn's entire body is littered with scars, most of which were caused by blades. His face remains unmarred until he gains several obvious scars on his face in adulthood, mostly because he refuses to fight with weapons and tries his best to defend himself and neutralize his opponents without causing any lasting harm. In 1015, an apathetic Thorfinn does not budge when one of Ketil's guests, Fox, goes at him with a sword to try to make him fear for his life, slicing off the tip of his left ear. In 1018, when him and Snake are fighting over Arnide's husband, Gardar, he slashes Thorfinn's face with his blade, resulting in a long scar starting at his right temple, extending across his right cheek and ending at his jaw, next to his chin. In May 1019, Thorfinn gets another piece of his left ear cut off, when Garm slashes him with his spear. In 1021, Thorfinn returns to Iceland from Greece with scars across the bridge of his nose and above his cheek. Before starting off to Vinland, he started slicking his hair back, which he still does in Vinland at 27 years old. Background. Thorfinn was born in Iceland in the winter of 996, where his family had fled after Thors decided to abandon his warrior lifestyle, and by virtue the Jomsviking as well. He grew up not knowing about his father's past as a warrior or his connection to the Jomsvikings. He lived with his family and was a happy, lively boy. He played with the children in the village, especially in mock combat, with wooden swords and shields, even though he was always the first one to lose. One day, Floki and his Jomsviking crew come to Iceland to get aid from his father, Thors. When his father was going out to battle, Thorfinn hid in a barrel on his father's ship. A mercenary named Askeladd, who was hired by Floki to take down Thors, came and dueled Thorfinn's father. Thors took down half of Askeladd's men, including his second in command. When the two faced off, Thors won the battle, but in exchange for Thorfinn's life, he was killed by many arrows from Askeladd's men. After his father died, Thorfinn vowed to seek vengeance for his father by becoming one of Askeladd's men in order to kill him in a duel, so he can avenge his father's death in a fair battle. Thorfinn then spent the next 11 years going to war with Askeladd's band in England. He became very strong, killing a great deal of men in order to get a duel from Askeladd to kill him. He became numb to the horrible acts he witnessed daily, and became cold and distant to others, never so much as smiling. He said that warriors are all madmen, himself included, after he fights Thorkel. He helps escort Prince Canute to Askeladd after the prince had been taken prisoner by Thorkel and left in a burning forest with his retainer, Ragnar. This was part of Askeladd's plan to take Canute back to the king and get favor, and Thorfinn went along with his plan as usual. Canute would then accompany Askeladd's band until his own band decided to revolt against Askeladd and kill him. After thinking that they were too weak to defeat Thorkel, who was chasing them down all across England the whole time, Thorkel was right on their heels and immediately caught up to them when they stopped in order to kill Askeladd. The entire band was slaughtered by Askeladd or Thorkel, who killed anyone who left Askeladd's band in order to join himself, as he saw the weak and didn't want the weak men to join his group. Askeladd then became a retainer to Canute, and so Thorfinn joined the prince's personal guard in order to stay close to Askeladd. After King Sweyn announced an invasion of Wales, Askeladd murdered the king, deciding to save both Canute and Wales. Canute then stabs Askeladd as part of Askeladd's plan after he slaughters dozens in the banquet hall. Askeladd then dies in Thorfinn's hands, who rushed in after hearing a noise from outside where he was waiting. Canute then offers Thorfinn a chance to go wherever he wanted, even back home to Iceland, but Thorfinn was shocked and dumbfounded by this revelation, and instead he slashed Canute in retaliation on instinct, only managing to cut his cheek. As a punishment for attacking the prince, he was sold as a slave. Canute didn't want anyone else killed. The slave arc. Thorfinn has now mellowed out and become empty and emotionless after being sold as a slave to Ketil, a landowner in Denmark, as he shows no purpose in life after Askeladd died. He is constantly haunted by nightmares of the many people he has killed, but never remembers what happened at the end of the nightmares. He always wakes up screaming in agony, sweating profusely. After being on Ketil's farm for over a year, he finds a friend in Einar, another slave Ketil buys to help on his farm. Einar doesn't like Thorfinn's lack of enthusiasm or energy initially and calls him lazy. After an incident with Olmar and Fox, where Fox tries to get Olmar to kill Thorfinn and Einar, the two started getting closer. One day, after Thorfinn wakes up screaming, Einar says he was screaming about Askeladd and father. Later that day, Thorfinn told Einar about Askeladd, and Einar realizes that this is the reason Thorfinn has no energy. He has no ambition after his only goal in life, to kill Askeladd, was taken away from him. He was completely empty. The next day, when Thorfinn and Einar are going back to their wheat farm, they discover some workers have destroyed all of their crops. Einar becomes enraged. They approach the workers, but once they say the slaves couldn't grow good wheat anyway, Thorfinn gets furious and punches one of them, knocking them out. Einar then starts to fight them, and Thorfinn tries to stop him, but as he does, he gets distracted and gets hit in the head with some wood by one of the other men, and loses consciousness. He sees images of a woman who cared for him when he was younger, when he invaded East Anglia, and his father, Thor's. This is where he remembers the nightmares he is haunted by, all of the people he has killed. After awakening from the nightmare, he starts crying, asking for forgiveness from Einar and the people he has killed, and so claims he will never hurt another person again. Over the next couple years, Thorfinn continues to grow as a person, becoming kind and empathetic towards others, and finding meaning in life for himself and the others around him. He attempts to find the first resort in every situation, but sometimes this is greatly difficult. Thorfinn makes friends with other people around the farm, such as Snake, one of Ketil's guards and guests, along with Sverkel, Ketil's elderly father, and Arnheid, Ketil's personal maid and concubine. Snake lounges around in Sverkel's house a lot of the time, and the two seem close, but they pretend they don't like each other. Sverkel lends Thorfinn and Einar a horse in exchange for helping around his house, as he seems to have taken a liking to the two. After years helping each other, they have gotten very close. One day, Snake notices that Sverkel has still not come home, even though it's dinner time, and Snake, along with Thorfinn and Einar, find him collapsed in his field. He is forced to stop farming, as he can no longer walk, and Ketil sends Arnheid to help Sverkel now. Snake keeps on staying around Sverkel's house as well. Soon after, Arnheid's husband, Gardar, escapes from another farm close by and tries finding Arnheid on Ketil's farm. Thorfinn tries to help Arnheid and Gardar by letting them both escape, but Snake doesn't want that to happen. Thorfinn fights with the decision of having to fight Snake with a vision of Askeladd, and ultimately starts a fight with Snake. During their fight, Thorfinn trips over a rock and leaves Snake next to Gardar, and Snake then stabs him through the chest. Gardar choked out Snake, but stopped him from killing him due to Arnheid, who told him they should leave. When they did, and Gardar died in the carriage they sat in, Gardar died in the carriage they sat in. Arnheid was tied up and left in a barn as punishment, and when a disgraced Ketil returned from his meeting with Canute in Denmark, and he found out that Arnheid tried to escape, he beat her with his stick. She tried to say she was pregnant with his child, but he didn't listen and continued. He beat Arnheid so badly that she ultimately succumbed to her injuries, to the horror of Thorfinn, and especially Einar. Thorfinn and Einar both agree over Arnheid's grave to journey to Vinland together to create a life of peace, away from violence and slavery for the people like Arnheid. They also call each other brothers. Meanwhile, Canute makes preparations to attack Ketil's farm to take his land, and Thorfinn initially is going to escape with Einar, Leaf, and Bug Eyes, but decides that he can't just abandon Snake and Sverkel and let them die after they took care of them and helped them out. Thorfinn goes to Canute in order to try to negotiate, but Drought refuses to let him see the king. Thorfinn gets them to agree that if he can see the king, I keep on fumbling my words. Sorry, guys. Thorfinn gets them to agree that he can see the king if he withstands 100 hits from Drought, which he ultimately does, despite being incredibly beaten and bruised. Once he gets to speak with Canute, he simply asks him to leave the farm alone, but Canute refuses. Thorfinn says he has no other option than to run away, to which Canute bursts out in laughter. He says that it was the funniest negotiation he had ever been a part of, and decides to leave soon after because, as he says later on to himself on his ship, they have the same goals. Thorfinn apologized to his mother. After saying farewell to Snake and Svirkle, Olmar, and the rest of Ketil's farm, other than Ketil himself, Thorfinn leaves with Einar, Leif, and Bug Eyes. Leif suggests they should make a stop in Iceland in order to see Thorfinn's mother, Helga, and sister, Ylva. After all this time away from them, Thorfinn and his friends arrive in Iceland, and Thorfinn struggles to remember how many years he has been gone. He's worried about seeing his mother and sister after so many years. They meet his sister, Ylva, first, but she doesn't even recognize him. They go out to meet his mother, Helga, and when she opens the door, she sees Thorfinn, immediately recognizing him, and says that he has eyes just like his father, and starts crying. Thorfinn then takes her hand and says she's so sorry for everything and for being a terrible son. Thorfinn takes her hand and says he's so sorry for everything and for being a terrible son. They then go inside and spend the evening and night there. Helga welcomes Einar as a son, as he is Thorfinn's brother now. Ari, who is Ylva's husband, comes back and remembers Thorfinn from back when he lived there and welcomed him. Then Ylva comes back home, but yet again does not recognize or believe he is her brother. Then Helga tells her that is really their Thorfinn, and then starts to beat Thorfinn in comical anger before being held back by Ari. Okay, that was the entire thing. Yeah, that would okay. I'm breaking character here. The Life of Thorfinn. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed. And this was Jonah.